The radio went dead. No voice, no signal, nothing but silence over the dark ocean. 200 passengers had no idea how close they were to danger. Then, from a quiet seat in the back, a woman's voice broke through the silence. She was a Navy pilot. Her call sign was Shark. And she was about to save everyone. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The plane was flying over the deep ocean when the radio went silent. 1 second the pilots were talking to ground control. The next second there was only quiet static. No voice. No signal. Nothing. Flight 402 had 260 passengers on board. It was a night flight, crossing thousands of miles of dark water with no land in sight. The captain was a calm man named David Reeves. He had flown planes for 18 years. But even he felt his hands go cold when the radio stopped working. "Try channel 2, he told his co-pilot, a young man named Ben Carter. Ben switched the channel. Static. He tried another one. Static. He tried the emergency channel. Nothing but silence. "Sir, all channels are dead," Ben said. His voice was shaking a little. "Even the backup radio is not working." David checked the screens in front of him. The navigation system was still showing their location, but slowly the numbers on the screen started to flicker. Then one screen went black. Then another. "This is not normal," David said quietly. "Radios don't fail like this. Not all at once." Outside the cockpit, in the passenger cabin, most people were sleeping. The lights were low. A flight attendant named Sarah Mills walked down the aisle, checking on passengers, not knowing anything was wrong yet. In seat 14C sat a woman named Emily Ross. She was in her 30s, wearing a plain gray jacket. She did not look important. She had a small bag under her seat and a paperback book in her hand. Most people walking past her would think she was just another tired traveler going home. But Emily was not an ordinary passenger. 6 years ago, she was a Navy pilot. Her call sign was Shark. She had flown patrol planes over oceans all around the world, searching for enemy submarines and watching for danger that other people could not see. She left the Navy 2 years ago, but the training never left her. Emily felt the plane shake slightly. It was a small movement, nothing most passengers would notice. But she noticed. She had felt movements like this before, during training flights when something on the aircraft was going wrong. She looked out the window. There was nothing outside except black sky and black water below. No lights. No ships. No land. They were in the middle of the ocean, far from any airport. A few minutes later, the flight attendant Sarah came down the aisle again. Her face looked different now. She was trying to smile, but her eyes looked worried. She stopped near row 14 to check on a sleeping child, and Emily saw her hands were shaking slightly as she adjusted the blanket. "Excuse me," Emily said quietly. "Is something wrong with the plane?" Sarah forced a smile. "Everything is fine, ma'am. Just a small technical issue. Please stay in your seat." Emily looked at her carefully. She had seen that same forced smile many times before, on the faces of young sailors trying to hide fear from their commanding officer. She knew that smile meant something was very wrong. "What kind of technical issue?" Emily asked. Sarah hesitated. "The radio is not working right now. The pilots are handling it." Emily felt her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from old instinct. 12 years of flying over open ocean had trained her body to react to danger before her mind fully understood it. "How long has the radio been down?" Emily asked. "About 10 minutes, Sarah answered. 10 minutes with no radio over open ocean was serious. Pilots are trained to always have a way to talk to ground control. If 10 minutes had already passed with total silence, it meant this was not a small problem. It was a major failure. Emily stood up from her seat. I need to speak to the pilots. Sarah looked shocked. Ma'am, please sit down. Passengers cannot go to the cockpit. My name is Emily Ross, she said calmly but firmly. I flew Navy patrol aircraft for 12 years. My call sign was Shark. I have experience with radio failures and navigation problems over open ocean. If your pilots are dealing with total communication loss, I can help them understand what is happening faster than waiting and guessing. Sarah stared at her, unsure what to do. She had never had a passenger say something like this before. But something about the calm and serious way Emily spoke made her believe it was true. Please wait here, Sarah said, and she walked quickly toward the cockpit door. Inside the cockpit, David and Ben were still trying every method they knew. They tried switching frequencies. They tried resetting the radio system. Nothing worked. The navigation screens were flickering on and off, showing wrong numbers, then correct numbers, then nothing at all. We are flying blind, David said. No radio, and now the navigation system is acting strange too. Could it be a storm? Ben asked. Some kind of electrical interference. The weather report showed clear skies for the whole route, David said. This does not feel like weather. This feels like equipment failure. But everything failing together like this. I have never seen that before. There was a knock at the cockpit door. Sarah's voice came through. Captain, there is a passenger who says she used to be a Navy pilot. She says she has experience with radio and navigation problems over the ocean. She wants to talk to you. David and Ben looked at each other. Normally, letting a passenger into the cockpit during a crisis would never be allowed. But right now, they had no radio, no ground control, and a navigation system that was failing. They had nothing to lose by listening to someone with real experience. Let her in, David said. Emily walked into the cockpit. It smelled like every cockpit she remembered from her Navy days, mixed with electronics and cool air. She saw the dark radio panel and the flickering screens immediately. Captain, I'm Emily Ross. Former Navy pilot, call sign Shark. I flew maritime patrol aircraft for 12 years, mostly over open ocean, often without support from ground stations for long periods. I know what it feels like to lose contact and still need to keep control of the aircraft. David studied her for a moment, then nodded. Radio has been dead for almost 15 minutes now. Navigation screens are flickering. We don't know if it's a system failure or something else. Emily moved closer to look at the screens. She watched the pattern of the flickering lights carefully. In the Navy, she had learned to read equipment failures the way a doctor reads symptoms. Random flickering usually meant a loose connection. But this flickering had a pattern. It happened at almost the same interval every time, like something was interrupting the signal on purpose, again and again. This does not look like a simple system failure, Emily said. The pattern is too steady. Normal equipment failure is usually random. This looks like something is affecting the signal from outside, cutting it off and letting it come back, over and over. Interference? Ben asked. From what? We are in the middle of nowhere. I don't know yet, Emily said. But I have seen patterns like this before during training exercises, when other aircraft or ships were testing signal-blocking equipment nearby. It is rare, but it happens. David rubbed his forehead. Even if that is true, what can we do about it? We still need to know where we are and we still need a way to talk to someone. Emily thought for a moment. Her Navy training came back to her clearly, like she had never left. First, we do not panic. Second, we do not depend only on the electronic systems. I was trained to fly and navigate using basic instruments and manual calculation when all modern systems failed. We can do the same thing here. You want us to navigate manually? Ben asked, surprised. Over open ocean, at night? Yes, Emily said. I have done it before. It is not comfortable, but it is possible. First, tell me your last known position before the system started failing. Ben checked his notes. He had written down the coordinates about 20 minutes earlier, before anything went wrong. He read the numbers to Emily. Emily quickly worked out the math in her head. She knew the plane's speed, its direction, and how much time had passed. Using this information, she could estimate roughly where they were now, even without GPS. Based on your last known position, your speed, and the time that has passed, you should be close to this area, Emily said, pointing to a spot on the paper chart that Ben kept as backup. Keep your current heading steady. Do not make any sudden turns. That will help us stay on a known and safe path. David nodded slowly. All right. What about the radio? While Ben worked on finding a signal, the plane hit a small patch of rough air. It was not dangerous, just a normal bump that happens during almost every long flight. But without working instruments to explain it, the sudden movement felt much bigger than it really was. Ben gripped the controls a little tighter. David glanced quickly at the dark screens, worried the turbulence might be connected to whatever was causing the failure. Easy, Emily said calmly. That felt like normal air movement, nothing more. If it was something serious, we would feel a change in engine sound or a pull to one side. There is none of that. Just stay level and steady. David took a slow breath and nodded. Her calm voice helped settle the tension in the small cockpit. Ben eased his grip on the controls, and a few seconds later, the air smoothed out again, just as Emily had said it would. How are you so sure? Ben asked, still catching his breath. I'm not sure about everything, Emily admitted. But panic makes people miss details. If you stay calm, you notice patterns. Right now, the pattern tells me this is electrical interference, not a structural problem with the aircraft. The plane itself is flying fine. It's the signals that are being blocked. Her words gave both pilots something to hold on to. Fear had been building quietly in the cockpit since the radio first went dead, but her steady voice and clear thinking gave them a plan to follow instead of only questions with no answers. All right, David said, sitting up straighter. Let's keep moving forward the way you suggested. Steady heading, no sudden changes, and we try the backup frequency next. Emily nodded. That's the right move. Small, steady steps. That is how you get through something like this, one clear decision at a time, not by rushing. Let's try something, Emily said. If this is outside interference, it may only affect certain frequencies or a certain area. Try switching to the oldest backup frequency you have, the one rarely used anymore. Sometimes older systems are not affected by newer interference. Ben searched through the panel and found an old backup frequency, one that pilots rarely used because newer technology had mostly replaced it. Let me try, Emily said. In the Navy, we used old backup frequencies like this all the time when main systems went down. Sometimes the way you speak on a weak signal matters. Short words. Steady voice. No rushing. David nodded and handed her the headset. Emily took a breath, the same way she used to before speaking into a dead channel over the open ocean, hoping someone far away was still listening. This is Flight 402, calling on emergency backup frequency, does anyone read, over. Silence. She tried again, her voice calm and even. Flight 402, calling any station, we have lost primary radio contact, please respond, over. There was only static. She waited a few seconds, then tried once more, slower this time, spacing out each word. Flight 402. Requesting any station, please respond, over. More crackling followed, weak and broken. Then, faint but real, a voice came through the static, answering her. Flight 402. This is Oceanic Control, we read you, weak signal, say again. Everyone in the cockpit froze for a second. It was Emily's voice that had finally broken through the dead air, the first voice from the plane to reach the outside world in almost 20 minutes. Oceanic Control, this is Flight 402, Emily said, keeping her voice steady. We are declaring a communication emergency. We lost primary radio and navigation systems approximately 20 minutes ago. We are currently flying on manual navigation with an estimated position based on last known data. David reached over and gently took the headset from her, ready to continue the conversation as captain, but he gave her a nod of thanks. Her voice was the one that had reached through the silence first, and everyone in the cockpit knew it. The voice on the other end was weak but understandable. Flight 402, we copy. We show your last known position on radar before signal loss. Please confirm current heading and altitude. David gave the information as Emily quietly checked the numbers beside him, making sure everything matched what she had calculated. For the next several minutes, the connection stayed weak, cutting in and out, but it was enough. Oceanic Control was able to confirm the plane's position using old radar data and guide them back onto the correct path toward the nearest safe airport, which was still over an hour away. While David and Ben worked with ground control, Emily kept watching the flickering navigation screens. Slowly, one by one, they began to stabilize. First one screen turned back on completely and stayed steady. Then another. Within 10 minutes, the main navigation system came back online fully, showing accurate position data again. Systems are stabilizing, Ben said, sounding relieved. I think whatever was interfering with us is gone now, or we moved out of its range. Emily nodded. That fits with what I thought. If it was some kind of localized interference, moving away from that specific area would explain why everything is coming back online now. David let out a long breath, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. Emily, I don't know what would have happened if you were not on this flight tonight. Thank you. You would have found a way, Emily said. Pilots are trained for emergencies. I just helped speed things up a little. You did more than that, Ben said. You stayed calm when the rest of us were starting to panic. You knew exactly what to check and what to try. That is not something people just guess. Emily smiled slightly. Old habits. Once you fly over open ocean long enough, with your life and your crew's lives depending on staying calm, it becomes part of you. You do not really turn it off, even after leaving the service. David looked at her with respect. For what it's worth, Commander Ross, you have my thanks, and I'm sure 260 passengers back there would say the same thing if they knew what almost happened tonight. Let's keep it that way, Emily said. No need to frighten anyone. The situation is under control now. That is what matters. She stayed in the cockpit a little longer, watching the system stay steady, making sure nothing else went wrong. Then, once she was confident the aircraft was fully stable and in full contact with ground control, she quietly returned to her seat in the cabin. Sarah, the flight attendant, met her in the aisle. Is everything all right? Everything is fine now, Emily said simply. You can tell the passengers there is nothing to worry about. Sarah studied her for a moment. You really were a Navy pilot, weren't you? Emily gave a small nod. A long time ago. Or maybe not so long ago. Some things you never really leave behind. She sat back down in seat 14C, picked up her paperback book, and opened it to the page she had left off. Around her, passengers slept peacefully, unaware of how close they had come to real danger, and unaware of how one quiet woman in a plain gray jacket had helped bring them safely back onto the right path. The rest of the flight continued without any more problems. The radio stayed connected. The navigation system worked perfectly. Hours later, the plane landed smoothly at its destination airport, the wheels touching down gently as the morning sun began to rise over the runway. As passengers gathered their bags and walked off the plane, most of them talking about their plans for the day. None of them knew what had happened high above the ocean during the night. None of them knew how close they had come to being lost with no contact, no direction, and no way to call for help. Only the pilots knew. And only Emily knew, better than anyone. Because for 12 years, finding a way through darkness and silence had been her job. Her call sign was Shark, and even though she no longer wore the uniform, some part of her would always be watching, always ready, always listening for trouble in the quiet places where most people never think to look. As she walked through the airport that morning, blending back into the crowd of ordinary travelers, nobody looked twice at her. She looked like any other tired passenger heading home. But somewhere behind her calm eyes was a woman who had once again proven that real strength does not always wear a uniform, and that sometimes, the person who saves everyone is sitting quietly in seat 14C, waiting until she is needed.